The wedding venue. Sophia Hayes was late, but she'd texted me just a few minutes ago, saying she was almost here. Under the stage, our friends and family were getting restless. I decided to mirror my phone to the big screen, trying to play it off with a laugh. See, everyone, Sophia is having a little wedding dress emergency. You can't blame me for this one. Right then, a FaceTime request popped up from Sophia. I froze for a second, then instinctively answered it. The image that filled the screen was obscene. Sophia, tell me I'm better than Liam Carter. Evan, you're so much better than him. Without missing a beat, I hit the screen record button and then gestured for the guests to quiet down. A show this good deserves an audience. In the video, Sophia was wearing a sheer nightgown, a stocking dangling from her lips, looking wild and unrestrained. And the man with her was Evan Cole, the guy she'd grown up with, her childhood best friend. A few seconds later, the crowd erupted. Most people whipped out their phones, recording the screen. I had already anticipated the chaos and stepped aside. Sophia's family and friends, however, were scrambling. Some were frantically searching for the projector's power switch, while her parents, Richard and Eleanor Hayes, rushed toward me. Liam, turn it off. Turn off your phone right now. Richard yelled. I just smiled. Mr. Hayes, is there any point in turning it off now? What was meant to be seen and what wasn't has already been seen by everyone, hasn't it? You did this on purpose, he hissed through clenched teeth. I shook my head. Sir, I have a reputation to protect, just like you. If I could have covered this up, I wouldn't be stupid enough to broadcast it. But your darling daughter sent me the video call. I answered and everyone saw. Everyone knows I've been cheated on. My reputation is already shot. So, let's make sure everyone sees the whole picture, that I'm the victim here. Only then can I, the victim, step in and do the damage control to minimize our losses. Damn it. Richard slapped his thigh, his face turning a ghastly shade of pale. I pulled out a small bottle of nitroglycerin pills and handed them to him. All right, Mr. Hayes. What's done is done. Getting angry is pointless. We need to focus on crisis management. He let out a long sigh and finally nodded. He was my father-in-law, but I was also his chief of staff. The methods he'd used to keep me working for him weren't exactly honorable. Still, he paid me the highest salary in the industry and made sure my family lived comfortably. So, despite my resentment, I was grateful. I was even grateful when he begged me to marry his daughter, Sophia. I agreed to try dating her, even knowing she had just had an abortion. A man, especially one who clawed his way out of a shack in rural West Virginia, has to learn how to compromise and how to be grateful. Eleanor Hayes looked at me, her eyes welling up with tears. She grabbed my hand. Liam, you poor thing. You've been wronged. Mrs. Hayes, you should go home for now. Lay low for a while. The gossip is going to be brutal. I waved over one of the security guards. A few moments later, Richard and Eleanor were escorted out. I disconnected my phone, walked back onto the stage, and addressed the remaining guests. Everyone, today's drama is over. Hayes Industries will be issuing a formal statement shortly. That Liam Carter is a born corporate drone, humiliated like this, and he's still thinking about the company. Hey, you Johnson, go give Liam my personal card. Tell him I want to offer him a CEO position. You're dreaming, Peterson. I tried to poach Liam years ago. Offered him $10 million a year. He didn't even blink. That kid is going to do great things. To stay this calm under this kind of pressure. That's the real reason Hayes Industries has been crushing it in the tech sector, even with Richard's health failing. The chatter from the crowd wasn't exactly quiet, but I was used to it. I've been classified as top-tier talent by every major headhunting firm since before I even graduated college. Sophia's relatives came up on stage to offer their condolences. None of them laughed at me. They all knew that for years, the only reason Hayes Industries had remained the dominant tech giant in Seattle, and the reason they all received their hefty dividend checks each year, was because I was the one running the show. They were more afraid of me leaving the company than anyone. I thought I wouldn't be that upset. I'd known for a long time that Sophia's heart wasn't with me. But after all these years together, getting hit with something like this, a wave of melancholy was unavoidable. I got home and collapsed on the sofa, my mind a complete blank. Then my phone rang. It was Sophia. Liam, what the hell was that? Why would you put that video on the big screen? You've ruined me, she screamed. I replied calmly. Because you were late, and the guests were getting impatient. I was just trying to show them our text to explain the delay. I had no idea you were going to send a live video, much less that you'd want to share your activities with me. It was an accident. I hit the button by mistake. Her voice was still choked with rage. And don't you dare get sarcastic with me. I was just saying a final goodbye to Evan. After today, I was still going to be your wife. Right? I know, I said, my tone flat. Why don't you sound angry? She asked suddenly, a hint of nervousness in her voice. You're the one who messed up, I said coolly. Why should I be the one to get angry? Good. If you make a scene, I'll have my dad fire you, she snapped. Fire me? I almost laughed out loud. I just hung up the phone. Then I told the housekeeper to take down all the wedding decorations. They were an eyesore. I went to my home office, brewed a pot of coffee, and got back to work. But not even half an hour later, Sophia was back. She was still in her white wedding dress, her face flushed, her neck covered in hickeys. Behind her stood Evan Cole, dressed like a groom himself, staring at me with a defiant smirk. Please wait a moment. I just have a few things to finish up, I said, my smile polite but distant. Sophia's brow furrowed, her eyes scanning my face as if searching for something. Then she exploded. Liam, I cheated on you. Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you jealous? I looked up, genuinely surprised. Sophia, I already told you on the phone. You're the one who made the mistake, and you're the one who will have to deal with the consequences. There's no need for me to be angry or jealous. My logic seemed to confuse her. She tilted her head, stunned for a moment, before saying, Did you ever even love me? If you loved me, how could you not be angry or jealous? I shook my head. I've been angry, and I've been jealous. But you just did whatever you wanted anyway, didn't you? So what's the point in wasting my energy? It's like programming. When you know a certain line of code will crash the system, you just don't write it. Am I just a line of code to you? Liam, I'm a person, she screamed, completely breaking down. I shook my head again. You're the one who cheated. Now you're the one who's hurt. That doesn't make any sense. Then let's get a divorce, she suddenly declared. We had already signed the marriage license before the ceremony. I nodded. Fine, we can get a divorce, but it will be according to the terms of the prenup. Evan's face lit up, as if he'd finally heard what he was waiting for. Sophia, don't hesitate. Divorce him. But Sophia shot Evan a venomous glare. She turned back to me, her eyes filled with disbelief. Liam, did you seriously ever love me? We were together for years. Of course I did. I shook my head. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because I don't love you now. So, you're absolutely sure we have to follow the prenup? She asked again. I nodded. Yes. The party at fault in the marriage forfeits everything, including all assets related to Hayes Industries. Fine, then let's do it. Sophia spat out, staring me down. Evan, however, had gone pale. Sophia, you can't. This is a setup. He's been planning this. Evan, you need to understand something, I said calmly. You and Sophia getting together was your choice. No one forced you. Therefore, there was no setup on my part. And when we signed the prenup, I went over every clause with Sophia multiple times. She was fully aware of the terms. Evan's lip twitched. Are you saying that if Sophia divorces you, she gets nothing? Correct, I nodded. Evan stammered. What about her parents' shares in the company? According to the prenup, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes' shares are considered joint marital property between Sophia and me. As of now, they belong to me. I stood up and looked at Sophia. A divorce will have an impact on the company, big or small. I don't recommend it. I'm thinking of the business. I hope you can understand. Evan immediately jumped in. That's right, Sophia. You shouldn't get a divorce. Sophia stared daggers at him. You've been talking about marrying me this whole time. Why are you suddenly against me getting a divorce? Is it because if I divorce him, I'll be broke? Is that it? Evan was speechless, his face ashen. I glanced at Sophia. You're not as dumb as you look. Most people think that when a relationship breaks down, divorce is the only answer. And in a way, they're right. A person's dignity, man or woman, gets trampled by infidelity. So divorce really is the most logical choice. But for a corporation, the stability of the family that holds the largest stake is a major factor for investors. So, for now, Sophia and I staying married was the best option. I even needed to host a live stream for the whole world, cementing my role as the victim who was willing to forgive his cheating wife for the sake of love. Plenty of people would call me a doormat, I knew. But what investors would see was the sacrifice I was willing to make for Hayes Industries. that I was willing to swallow my pride to protect the company. It would signal that Hayes Industries was unbreakable. And that's exactly what I did. After the scandal blew up online, I went live. During the broadcast, I cried for a long time, my voice thick with emotion as I recounted the story of how Sophia and I met and fell in love. Of course, all those touching little anecdotes were written by a PR firm and memorized by me. I then declared that as long as Sophia was willing to come back, I would continue to fulfill my duties as her husband. Then, Sophia appeared, weeping, saying how much she regretted everything. She claimed that nothing had actually happened between her and Evan, that she had been drugged and wasn't in her right mind. Online, the public reaction was overwhelmingly one-sided. No one sympathizes with a doormat victim. They even started to think the cheaters weren't so bad. And then came the flood of insults, all directed at me. I didn't care. This was all part of my plan. It was the only way to protect the interests of Hayes Industries. When I got back to the house, Richard and Eleanor Hayes were there. With them was a coolly detached woman in a black power suit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore silver-framed glasses. The suit made her look both professional and incredibly sharp. "Claire," I said, surprised. Years ago, in a desperate move to keep me at Hayes Industries, Richard had arranged for both me and Claire Vance to be drugged at a company banquet, then had a female employee take compromising photos of us. If I insisted on leaving, the photos would be leaked. Society is kinder to men in these situations. For me, it would just be another wild story. But for Claire, it would be a career-ending humiliation she could never live down. So I stayed. A few days later, Claire was transferred to the European office. That was 5 years ago. We hadn't seen or spoken to each other since. After all, as soon as Claire was gone, Richard had started aggressively pushing for Sophia and me to get together. The Hayes family had no sons, only one daughter. Richard knew my value and was already playing the long game, positioning me as the son-in-law who would take over the family empire. "It's been a long time," Claire replied, her tone icy. I nodded, understanding her resentment, and didn't press further. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," I said, sitting down on the sofa. "The company's losses have been minimized. I believe I've more than repaid the investment you made in my education all those years ago. It's time to let me leave Hayes Industries." I noticed Claire tense up, her gaze now pleading. She was afraid that if I left, those photos would finally be released. Before Richard could answer, Sophia came downstairs. With her was Evan, and both of them were disheveled. You could still see beads of sweat on their skin. A blind man could see what they'd just been doing. I sighed. Why did she always insist on doing the stupidest things in public? "Liam Carter, you listen to me. I do not agree to a divorce," Sophia declared. "If you try to leave, I'll go public and admit I cheated first. I'll let the company's stock value evaporate." She stared at me, her eyes burning. "I'm going to make you watch me and Evan every single day, living under the same roof. I'll even throw it in your face." I was starting to think this woman had a serious mental problem, but her words still stung. It seemed she really didn't see me as a human being, which made sense, I guess. I had just sacrificed my own dignity to save her family's company. From her perspective, it must have looked like I would do anything for the business. She had never understood me at all. I glanced at her. "Sophia, I think you've misunderstood something. I saved the company to repay a debt. I only ever intended to save it once, not over and over again." I turned to her parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, since it's come to this, I'll be blunt. If Sophia pulls another stunt like this, I will not be cleaning up the mess." Eleanor looked down, tears streaming down her face. She had always treated me like her own son and had been the most vocal opponent of her husband's scheme to trap me. Richard clutched his chest, his body trembling, but he finally managed to say, "Liam, you've done more than enough for our family. I won't stop you anymore. You can go." I shook my head. "Mr. Hayes, you know what I want." Richard glanced at Claire. "The truth is, there were never any photos. That night, you and Claire didn't do anything." The next day, when Claire felt sore, it was because one of the female servers was a trained physical therapist and had given her a deep tissue stretch. I was stunned for a moment, then I understood his game. Richard continued, "It was a test. If you had walked away that night without any regard for Claire's reputation, she would have been fine. I would have told her the truth, but your character would have been questionable in my eyes. But you didn't. You proved you were worth the investment. I sighed, speechless. Richard turned to Claire. I'm sorry, Claire. Although no physical harm was done, I never told you the truth about that night. I'm sure it caused you significant psychological distress. That was my mistake. It doesn't matter. I got more than enough out of the deal, Claire said frostily. Well, in that case, I had nothing left to worry about. I stood up. Then that's settled. I'll be going. You're not allowed to leave. Sophia suddenly lunged at me, grabbing my shirt. If you walk out that door, I'll destroy Hayes Industries. The company belongs to your family, not me, I said, shrugging her hand off. I repaid my debt. You can't threaten me with the company anymore. But I would suggest that when you and Evan are together, you try to be a bit more discreet. Once this whole thing blows over, I'll file for divorce. Hearing this, Evan suddenly ran over. Sophia, just let him go. The excitement in his eyes was impossible to hide. In his mind, if they waited for the scandal to die down before divorcing, Sophia would inherit the Hayes fortune. And then, everything she had would be his. I shot him a cool look. Evan, do you know who drafted that prenup? What do you mean? Evan asked, confused. I smiled. Mr. Hayes drafted it. Because he and Mrs. Hayes know their daughter isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and they were worried the family fortune might fall into the hands of someone with ulterior motives. That's why the infidelity clause exists. Evan's face went white. He opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. You must be wondering what happens to the family assets if Sophia and I have a normal divorce, right? I continued. I can answer that for you. Even in a normal divorce, the assets remain under my control. I would only be required to provide Sophia with a monthly stipend for basic living expenses. And by basic, I mean just enough to not starve. I added with a slight smile. As for anyone else trying to spend her money, I can legally recover it at any time. And if you can't pay it back, you go to jail. Truly wealthy families don't leave loopholes for gold diggers. Evan yelled at Richard. Aren't you afraid Liam will just take the money and run? I only care about 3 people in this world, Richard said calmly. My wife, my daughter, and Liam. If my daughter can't manage this fortune, then it belongs to Liam. There was no shouting match, no dramatic confrontation. It was all handled like a business negotiation. Evan was baffled. But if that happens, Sophia won't be able to live well. You mean, if that happens, there's no profit in it for you, right? Richard cut him off. Evan, let me tell you something. A family like ours would sooner cash out everything and burn it in the street than let a person like you have a single penny. As for Liam, if he wants to make money, all he has to do is snap his fingers and someone will offer him a multi-million-dollar salary and company stock. Besides, he doesn't care about money. I don't believe it. I don't believe anyone doesn't care about money. Evan said, looking lost. I shook my head. Evan, what's your ambition? To live a life of luxury without having to work for it, right? I was like you once back when I had nothing. But when I acquired more knowledge, I realized money wasn't that important. My ambition is to do something for this country, to make a breakthrough in AI technology to go down in history. Evan's mouth hung open, but no words came out. We're on completely different levels, with different perspectives. Of course you wouldn't understand. I turned to leave, but Sophia blocked my path, refusing to let me go. She suddenly reached up and wiped at the hickeys on her neck. Liam, they're fake. It's all fake. I had a makeup artist put them on to make you angry. Even a video. It was a deep fake, prepared ahead of time. It wasn't me. This time, it was my turn to be stunned. I pulled out my phone, imported the saved video clip into a professional analysis software. And there it was. AI generated. I even found the source video, a blonde woman with blue eyes. Richard and Eleanor, seeing a glimmer of hope, crowded around. Richard pulled me back to sit on the sofa. Liam, he asked, his voice pleading, if it was all fake, could you and Sophia maybe talk things over? He didn't care about the money. He was just a father who, despite everything, wanted his foolish daughter to be happy. I knew he still wanted me as his son-in-law. I looked at Sophia, completely exasperated. What on earth are you doing? Honestly, when I first saw the video of her and Evan, I was hurt. But it was a pain I could easily set aside. I've always believed that anything I have to beg for isn't worth keeping. That's why I've been so calm through this whole ordeal. But for Sophia to deceive me with a deep fake, using the very AI program our company developed, that made me genuinely angry. Not because of the act itself, but because I couldn't understand why she would cause all this chaos. "What am I doing?" she sobbed. "Liam, I just wanted to know if you ever truly loved me. Do you know why Hayes Industries sponsored your scholarship in the first place? It was because I had a crush on you, but you were this genius in the computer science department, and I was just a slacker. I was too scared to confess. I just thought, if I could help you have a good life, then I would be happy too. When you came to work for the company to repay my dad, do you know I was so happy I couldn't sleep all night? I could see you every day, and my parents were even trying to set us up, but you were always so distant. Do you have any idea how insecure that made me feel? But even then, I still liked you. I wanted you more and more, but I was so scared you didn't love me back. So I set up that whole thing with you and Claire, to make sure you couldn't leave the company. I thought, if you'd been with another woman, you wouldn't be a virgin anymore, and then you'd be on my level. But then you spent all your time looking for Claire. Even after she left, you kept trying to contact her. Do you know how much that hurt? And even after you agreed to date me, I was still worried. So I tested you. I told you I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship, that I'd had an abortion. I even forged medical records to convince my parents. But in all these years, you never once asked about it. That proved you didn't care about me at all. Even on the day we got our marriage license, you didn't smile. I was sure you were thinking about Claire. That's why I did all this. I brought Evan home on purpose today too, just to see you get angry, to see you get jealous, but you didn't." Sophia collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. I just stood there completely floored. "Liam, are you really this dense? Or are you just pretending?" she continued. "If I'd really had a boyfriend before, would I have cried from the pain that first time we were together? And what about you? After that night, you barely touched me. I always had to be the one to initiate, and you always seemed uninterested. I was at a loss. No, that night you said it hurt. I thought it was because of the abortion. I didn't touch you after that because I was worried your body couldn't handle it. And then the company was going through a major restructuring. I was barely sleeping. Truthfully, I did care whether she'd really had an abortion. What man wouldn't? But I'm the kind of person who, once I commit to something, gives it all. So I never held it against her. I just never imagined she had been testing me from the very beginning. Look, I'm a tech guy. Okay, if you test me like this, you're never going to get the answer you want. You should have just asked me directly. I'm the kind of person who, if you ask me a sincere question, I'll always give you a sincere answer. I felt like everything was spiraling out of control. Sophia, through her tears, shot a vicious look at Evan. He was the one giving me all these ideas. We grew up together. I never thought he would try to hurt me. Evan was now paler than a ghost, trembling from head to toe. He knew exactly what was coming for him. The usually gentle Eleanor Hayes spoke. "I don't want to see him again. Ever." For security guards moved in and grabbed Evan. "Sophia, you can't do this to me," he screamed. "I love you. I love you more than anyone. I told you a long time ago. I only love Liam. I rejected you." Sophia shouted back. "And you don't love me. You just want my family's money." She gestured to the guards. "Take him away." Evan was dragged out of the house, still screaming. The atmosphere in the room grew even more awkward. Claire stood up. "Mr. Hayes, I assume I'm no longer needed here." "Well, Claire, Richard looked flustered. Eleanor gave a forced smile. "Liam, your father-in-law, and I feel we owe you so much. We also think you and Claire are a great match. That's why we brought her back, to try and set you two up. But now," I had to laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, I appreciate the thought, but I have to say your methods are a bit extreme. You have very little regard for other people's feelings. But what could I do? In the world of a man like Richard Hayes, ordinary people were just pawns in a game. When you're standing at that height, you operate by a different set of rules. Even Claire and I, in our own professional lives, had learned to treat people like pieces on a chessboard." I stood up and looked at Claire. "I'm sorry. You got dragged into this because of me again. We all do what we have to do. I understand." Claire nodded and turned to leave. But I followed her out, calling back to Sophia. "Have you ever considered that the moment you let Evan convince you to test me, you were already showing a lack of trust? Doesn't that also mean that Evan still holds a pretty important place in your heart?" "Sophia, we're done." There was no dramatic fight. No salacious details leaked to the press. No clinging or begging. It just ended. This was one of the ways the wealthy handled their problems. I hadn't driven my own car. It belonged to the Hayes family. So, I shamelessly hitched a ride with Claire. She drove in steely silence while I sat in the back, not saying a word. We were like two strangers. "I feel like you're the boss, and I'm your driver," Claire said suddenly. If I had sat in the passenger seat, it might have felt different. But what a romantic might call the special seat, I saw as a safety risk. I was long accustomed to sitting in the back. I didn't know what to say, didn't want to make it awkward, I admitted with a sheepish grin. "And you still insisted on getting in my car," she retorted. "I doubt the Hayes family would have stopped you from taking one of their cars." "Okay, you're right," I confessed. "I've always felt like I owed you, and I wanted to say something, but I figured you probably didn't want an apology or any kind of consolation for me, so I just couldn't get the words out." At that, Claire pulled the car over to the side of the road. There was a collection of food trucks nearby, selling spicy Korean barbecue and seafood stir-fry. "Are you hungry?" she asked. I nodded. I was starving. We walked over to the food trucks, and she carefully ordered for us. I didn't know my way around a place like this. When I was poor, I couldn't afford it, so I never looked. When I finally had money, I never had the time. The food was fiery, but delicious. I had a couple of cold craft beers. They were crisp and refreshing, and my mood started to lift. That night, I was actually somewhat conscious. Claire said out of the blue, "Maybe we really didn't do anything, but I remember you kissing me. And your hands were not behaving. You hurt me." She pointed to her chest. My face flushed. "Sorry, I was pretty out of it. I honestly don't remember what I did, but I do remember having a very vivid dream." "Don't apologize," Claire said, shaking her head. "Like I said, we're both people who have to do things we don't want to. I don't even hate the Hayes family, so I'm certainly not going to hate you." "Why don't you hate them?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Besides manipulating me, they were actually very good to me. Like you, I was sponsored by them. They were my benefactors, and after I went abroad, they took excellent care of my family. They were worried I'd be in danger, so they had a team of 8 bodyguards with me for 5 years. They also gave me a huge amount of autonomy to build my career. I really have no reason to hate them. I don't like how they treat people like pawns, but I can't bring myself to hate them either. Their methods are ruthless, but not sloppy," I said with a wry smile. Claire nodded in agreement. Then she asked, "You tried to find me after that." "What?" "I wanted to apologize," I said honestly. "And I also thought since we'd already, been in that situation, maybe we could try dating. Back then, every single guy at the company thought you were a goddess. I was no exception. I'm back in the States now. I'll probably be taking over your position at Hayes Industries now that you've resigned," she said. "What I mean is we could give it a try now." She winked at me, then lowered her voice. "I've never had a boyfriend, and I'm almost 30. I've been breaking out lately, and my acupuncturist says there's an easy cure for that. I need a boyfriend." I froze, unsure what to say. "Still thinking about Sophia?" Claire asked, her tone unreadable. It was just a simple question. I shook my head. "Sophia and I will likely remain legally married for a while. And I just got out of a relationship. I'm feeling a bit adrift. That's all. So we can start as friends," she said. She picked up a napkin, smiled, and leaned over to gently wipe the corner of my mouth. A few days later, I handed over my duties to Claire and officially left Hayes Industries. That same day, I started a new tech firm. Just as Richard Hayes had predicted, I had a multi-million-dollar salary, a company car and condo, and the second highest number of shares after the chairman. It pays to have a skill. A high-level one can make you a king. A basic one can at least keep you fed and clothed. Sophia didn't cause any more trouble. She had gotten sick. At first, I thought it was something minor, but 2 weeks later, Eleanor called me, crying. She said Sophia had cancer and didn't have long to live, and she was refusing chemo. She was always so conscious of her appearance. Of course, she wouldn't choose that path. I took a leave of absence from my new job and went back to the house Sophia and I had once shared. The garden in the front yard, filled with her favorite flowers, was a place she used to tend to herself. By the house was a doghouse, and the golden retriever who lived there still came running up to me, tongue lolling, tail wagging, and nuzzled against my leg. Everything was so familiar, yet so foreign. I walked into the house and saw Sophia on the sofa, watching TV and crying. It looked like one of those old, ridiculously melodramatic K-dramas. When she saw me, she jumped, quickly wiping her tears and fixing her hair. I turned off the TV and started clearing the cluttered coffee table in front of her. Liam, what are you doing here? She asked hesitantly. Aren't you with Claire? I'm busy. Claire's busy. Even if we were interested in each other, we don't have time to date. We barely even have time to text, I explained with a small smile. I thought for a moment, then added, your mom told me about your diagnosis. So I came to be with you. I know you care about your looks and would never accept chemo, so I came to walk you through this final journey. The smile Sophia had managed to plaster on her face crumbled, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Don't cry. Everyone gets to this day, eventually. You're just going a little earlier than me. I sat beside her and, just like old times, wrapped my arm around her. Go put on some makeup and change your clothes. We're going out. Where are we going? She asked, her face full of hope. Wherever you want to go. I suddenly realized that Sophia was actually very easy to please. Once, at a banquet, a woman had accidentally stumbled into my arms and left a lipstick mark on my shirt. When Sophia saw it at home, she threw a massive fit. But when I explained what happened and tried to calm her down, all she asked for was for me to take her to Disneyland for a day. I agreed, but we only stayed for half the day before I was called back to the office for an emergency. She was disappointed, but came back to the office with me. While I worked, she sat on her phone, furiously complaining about her teammates in a game. If I were a woman, already insecure, and I was with a logic-driven guy like me who was clueless about her feelings, I'd probably feel insecure too. Suddenly, I didn't care anymore that she had listened to Evan, that she had created so many misunderstandings, or even that she had publicly humiliated me. After all, she hadn't actually betrayed me. Meanwhile, I was the one who often found my thoughts drifting to Claire. Maybe I was the one at fault. For the next 6 months, Sophia and I traveled everywhere. Her illness would often flare up in a new city, but she refused to be hospitalized, relying on powerful painkillers to get by. Even as her body was failing, she was insatiable at night, wanting me again and again. Then, at Zion National Park, she disappeared. I searched for her for hours, but she was gone. I finally just sat down on the side of a road and cried. She sent me a text. An old dog will walk away from its master when it's time to die. I will walk away from the person I love when it's my time. There was a photo attached, a picture of her back as she sat watching the sunset, her arms spread wide, as if she were about to take flight. When I returned to Seattle, I met with Richard and Eleanor and promised to take care of them for the rest of their lives. Claire and I never pursued a relationship. She said that when she first came back, she couldn't see a trace of Sophia in my eyes. But now, my eyes and my heart were filled with her. I didn't need her to tell me. I already knew. I finally understood that love needs companionship. It's not like code that, once written, is complete. Half a year flew by in a blur. One evening, after feeding the dog, I went back inside to work. The wind started to pick up, and I worried it was going to rain, so I went to bring the dog inside. But he was gone. I remembered Sophia's words. An old dog will walk away from its master when it's time to die. Was our golden retriever dying? My heart ached. If he died too, there would be very little left of what Sophia had given me. I ran out into the wind, searching everywhere. And then, under a large oak tree, I saw a woman in a black hoodie, crouched down, holding the dog in her arms. I stormed over, yanked her to her feet, my voice raw with anger. I thought you were fucking dead. Sophia cried out in surprise. Later, I found out she had been faking it the whole time. The mastermind behind the deception was the woman who had always treated me like a son, Eleanor. She had lied to me, told me Sophia had cancer. So I went to her, and in that time, I gave her all my love, all my companionship, and I fell completely. I slung her over my shoulder, carried her back to the house, and dropped her on the sofa. Where the hell have you been for the past 6 months? I haven't been anywhere. I've been here at home, the whole time, Sophia mumbled, looking down at the floor like a scolded child. Why did you lie to me? I demanded. You must have seen how much pain I was in. I was afraid if I told you the truth, you would hate me, she stammered. And I thought you liked Claire, so I wanted to get out of the way. I don't know, I was so confused. She burst into tears, threw her arms around me, and started kissing me desperately. Let's not separate again, okay? She whispered.